and welcome to the C-Suite Edge podcast. I'm your host, John Light. I'm the founder and CEO of Sabretooth Recruiting, and today I feel, even though we haven't spent much time talking, I feel like I know what Seth Pinegar does day to day as the West Coast Regional Director of the CFO Center. Seth, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to, as we get started, to kind of set the table, if we could, Seth, and have you give us a 90-second overview, because I think you've got a very interesting background. You know, and I originally come from an accounting background professionally before I repented of it, if you will, and got into the headhunting business. So I'm really curious to know, because I know you've been with some big names like UBS and others, and now at the CFO Center, you've been with them for a long time. I don't know, man, you're transcontinental in a sense with your tenure with them. How about laying out the groundwork of what brought you to the CFO Center and what you're doing today?
Well, I started my career in investment banking, and like you with accounting, I'm still recovering from that. But in investment banking, you get to meet a lot of dynamic entrepreneurs, a lot of shareholders who want value creation, and you learn how to execute that. Then I came out of banking after about a decade and started to work with entrepreneurs as part of the leadership team and learn how to run operations, learn how to do corporate development from inside the company rather than outside the company, as bankers do, and chop some pretty nice wood in terms of creating value, learning operations, improving operations through, obviously financial metrics and running a tight ship. And then figured, want to go back to work with entrepreneurs. So became a consultant and formalized that through CFO Center in early 2017. Actually started in Shanghai, where I launched the business there in mainland China as a country. And then now have launched it on the West Coast in the U.S.
That's part of what I find fascinating is, here you are, you're in Shanghai, China. You find something to do, and you introduce it to the entire country, and then you bring it here to the West Coast in the U.S., which, in some respects, is its own animal compared to Middle America and the East Coast. Various spins on culture and how we go about business and whatnot. But let's get started. I'm going to touch on that again, I think, in a few minutes. But I'd like to get started to understand a little bit more from, that professional execution perspective. Where do you and CFO Center kind of hang your hat, so to speak? What's the biggest problem you all solve for your clients?
We help our clients, business owners, grow and or restructure and or monetize in a financially healthy way that adds predictability to the financial outcomes of their business and ultimately frees them up from having to worry about having to be their own CFO, right? And we do that in a very cost-effective way because we're fractional. And especially in the West Coast, a full-time CFO is a very expensive hire, right? And oftentimes it takes a long time to recruit, a long time to ensure that somebody's going to come in and have the right culture, especially because it's a very important position in a business of any size. But we take all that away. We come in and we're effective within the first 3 or 4 months of our work plan because we've executed these over and over and over again. All our people are, 25, 30-year plus experienced CFOs who have seen what good looks like in lots of different businesses. And so we bring that to the table and we know how to execute the playbook very quickly.
Okay, I love that term. I use it on a daily basis. We know what good looks like. It seems like so many folks, if you're in a company and you don't have a finance function or a CFO in that role executing on the finance function and helping to pilot the ship, so to speak, and you're kind of just figuring it out, it's hard to know what good looks like. I mean, there's a ton of options out there from a finance perspective, depending on the size of the company and the industry, and the cash levels and all that other stuff. So let me ask you this. What would your ICP be? That is to say, what would your ideal client look like? I mean, are these small, medium businesses? Are these medium enterprises? Do they lean into very closely held private businesses or more towards, S corps or even public companies? I mean, where do you guys fall? in that regard?
Our typical client profile can be as small as 3 to 4 million in revenue, but growing quickly, and therefore they need eyes on working capital and what financially healthy growth looks like. Or it could be, we've had $150 million businesses that are just really complicated and need somebody who's not just doing the accounting and the bookkeeping every day, but actually somebody who can bring in financial strategy, corporate finance, figure out how to position the business via the numbers, either for a recapitalization, maybe a partial growth equity raise, and or an eventual exit, and in some cases even IPO prep.
Wow. So statistically, and I'm sure you've heard this somewhere as well, 95% of all new job creation happens in companies with less than 500 headcount.
Yeah.
95%.
That makes sense.
And
yeah.
But it sounds like that's your ICP right there, companies that are in that phase, because it takes a lot of cash to fuel headcount growth.
Yes, it does. And that's why financially healthy growth is absolutely a priority, especially when you get to a couple hundred employees and you have a lot of mouths to feed, and it's not just about making payroll, it's about making good commercial decisions that are on a pro forma basis are going to be accretive to margins and cash flow as you grow.
So when you look across the landscape, where do you see your primary competition coming from? Because, let's face it, there are a lot of staffing firms and consulting or advisory firms that over the years have kind of bum rushed their way into the space. And I could name names if I wanted to, but you would know them all probably anyway. But you see it all the time, and often they're trying to do a lot more than just the CFO chair. They're pushing fractional controllers, fractional accountants, all the way down to fractional clerical, AP, AR, and things of that nature. What sets you apart from those players there at the CFO Center?
We see a lot of firms offering fractional CFOs, and I've chatted with a bunch of them to try to source controllers and senior accountants for the business that I'm a fractional CFO in. And what I've found is, while they may have CFO in their name and they talk about CFOs and strategic finance and all that, at the end of the day, they're outsourcing businesses, and that business model is about butts and seats. Right, and that's a scaled up business model where you make more money at the bottom, selling the bottom of the pyramid, than you do selling the one person at the top, which would be the CFO. We're only fractional CFOs. That's all we do. We've done it for 24 years. We're in 17 or 18 countries. We have 750 CFOs, and that's all we do, and we're very, very good at it. And we keep a lot of data on what works and what doesn't work with our client engagements, and that's part of how we bring in our CFOs and get them ready to be fractional CFOs in our organization. And we're very methodical about how we run our engagements and manage our engagements. And that's all we do. And we're very good at it, and that's all we want to do. We'll partner with those other CFO firms to find fractional accountants and controllers for our clients, and we're happy to do that. But all we do is fractional CFOs really, really well.
Man, I tell you what, I love that message. I think that's a great message. Too many companies out there try to do too many things to too many people.
Yeah.
And what is it? Can I quote a Disney movie here? The Incredibles, when everybody's special, no one is.
Yeah.
And I mean, we got to, as business professionals and people in the finance and accounting field especially, every company needs what you do, almost without exception. The question is, how do we get it? At what point does it become not just affordable, but a necessity we can't ignore? And it sounds to me like, say, you're sitting in that intersection, but like anyone else in an intersection, you see a lot of traffic, people trying to push their way through it. Tell me a little bit about, I was going to ask you, you might think this is frivolous, I was going to ask if there's ever like a happy hour with all the people from the CFO Center in a region getting together. What's it like to have nothing but CFOs to talk to?
Most will tell you that's a very, very boring happy hour. We actually, but because of the culture of our organization, and culture is something that we actually recruit heavily for, because we, passing the barbecue test is a must, right? And not just with our clients, but also with us. We want people that are engaging, right? We want people that can have a conversation. All we talk about, it's not just the numbers, right? It's not just the financial results. A lot of what we do with our clients is helping them not just with their business, but detaching them in some sense from their business, so that they can have a better life and sleep better and have more family time, right? And so we have to be able to have those conversations. So a happy hour with us is going to be very different than with your average accounting team.
Sorry, it popped in my head, and I couldn't let that question go.
No, yeah, because part of our business is being relatable to the business owners, right? That's a big part of our business. Yeah.
I have a client today, and I'm not going to name names because, in a sense, I'm protecting the guilty, and I do mean guilty, not innocent, in any stretch, who is an extremely slow pay on their invoices. And it's gotten to the point of being just ridiculous. And so we're not doing any new business until we get this stuff straightened up with this particular client. But what's amazing to me is the founder of the business has grown the business, well north of $100 million in revenue. But the CEO is still involved every week in running and reviewing accounts payable and who they're paying and when. Okay. And he still cuts checks, doesn't do ACHs, and he'll just sit on stuff and hold it, forget about it until the checks expire, basically. I mean, he'll hold it that long. And he's always having to find new vendors, and he's always fighting fights with them. He can't get discounts. I mean, any of that stuff. Now, props, kudos for building a business from 0 to 100 mil plus.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as a company grows, you can't run a business successfully and grow it when you're waist deep in stuff like AP.
Yeah, especially a C-level executive on the business side. Yeah.
I can't help but imagine companies like that where you're growing and you're having to do stuff that it works okay when you're running a couple mil in revenue, but it doesn't work okay when you're running 20, 30, 200 million in revenue. And that's where you guys come in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think culturally, a company that's focused on that as opposed to financially healthy growth and strategic finance, they're going to be missing some things, right? And playing with vendors at that level on such a systematic basis on the business side, you're missing things if that's how you're spending your time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're not going to hit your growth target unless you get really lucky, I think.
And stretching payables isn't the only lever you can pull in creating shareholder value through corporate finance. That's one small lever. There are a lot of other levers too. So it's if that's the intention that this particular client has of yours, then there's a much bigger picture, and that's kind of where we come in.
Yeah, but I mean, most business owners, most founders, I'm speaking as a founder, we don't always see that. I'm really good at what I do as a tip of the spear on business development, on the searches that we run. But even with an accounting background, I can talk P&L. It almost sounds like it's dirty. I can talk P&L. But it's really about everybody has blind spots. And there's some things, man, I hate. Tax forms.
Yeah.
I hate, the rigmarole of going in and doing things repetitiously over and over, the same old. It just makes me feel flat and stale. So I know at some point, I hope I need a controller or a CFO or someone like that on a full-time basis. That means to me, the business is thriving. Yeah. We're going places.
Yeah, and usually founders, their passion is growing the business, doing the business, dealing with customers, dealing with partners, putting together deals, moving the needle, right? Most of the time, their passion is not getting into the minutia of accounts receivable collection or accounts payable aging and that type of thing. And at $100 million, If it's a business that makes a lot of purchases, especially hard goods, you probably want to have a dedicated purchasing function anyway, because they're the people that should be managing that and getting the best deal, not the CEO or the president or the business people.
Yeah, no, well, somebody needs a CFO to whisper in their ear. Speaking of that, Seth,
we're right here.
If someone wanted, if someone wanted to learn more about what you're doing in the CFO Center here, especially in the western region of the U.S., what's the best way for people to find you and get in touch?
Email seth.pinegar@cfocenter.com, and because we were founded in the UK, center and my email address is an RE, not an ER.
Okay, got it. And you and I are going to have to make sure we're connected on LinkedIn, so if anyone's listening and you're connected with me, finding Seth is easy, or ping me for an intro. Happy to do it. Seth, thanks so much for joining us today.